Welcome to Thoughts on Thursday. It's Reverend Miller.
And Stuart Holmes.
Last week we asked if you had any questions, you could post them on about worship. We haven't received any yet, but what we're looking at is different things happening in our world today in culture that have an impact on worship, and then how do we respond to those impacts, good or bad. And so, we'll be looking next week at denominationalism that's really on the downslide. So you have more diverse people within one congregation. But today we're going to look at COVID-19 and how that has impacted worship. And then we have to make choices, right, Stuart, on that. And for the most part, you probably have experienced those changes and know. And so it is amazing that when COVID happened, even the smallest churches somehow could have an online presence through Facebook, using an iPhone. And you saw, really, because of technology, the ability to adapt and make changes. And currently, there are still churches that are not meeting in person, only through Zoom or YouTube or Facebook or some other application for video. We're doing a hybrid of in-person and then posting it afterwards. And we've been able to update. We went from an iPhone to a camera. But with that, for us, as we're doing a hybrid format of in-person and also on video, both those things kind of have a push and pull, because what you're going to watch in person and what you can see in person will be different than on video. So we've had to make some choices. And then also with COVID-19, with distancing, we still are not doing congregational singing. So all those things have impacted us. We actually went to a shorter service, and one reason is we're not passing the plates for offering, and so that cuts out some time.
That always took so long because they put so much into the. I digress.
Yeah. And so, without congregational singing, we've reduced hymns in the length of a hymn. We might not sing all the verses as people are following along. And so, one impact on worship, because we're not doing as much responsive reading or congregational singing, it makes it more passive, right, Stuart?
Yeah, it does.
And that's always a challenge, but that was our choice we've made to keep us safe. So COVID-19, an impact of it has made worship a little more passive. Now, that's bad in one sense, but maybe a good thing is when we get to sing as a congregation once again, people will love it even more, and we'll hear better singing.
We're hoping no one forgot how to sing.
Exactly.
In my world.
Yeah, and that's a challenge that we're looking at. We also had to rearrange our communion table pulpit. We went to the older communion table and pulpit because of size and also screen. So we look at that, what it's looking like, not only in person, but also on video. And you probably have noticed we took one of the walls down, so when Stuart's playing, you can see it on the video. And we did that really so that if you're at home, you're not just listening, you also get to see Stuart pressing the keys, and it's also a visual effect. So that's a choice we made. We've also had to make some choices with singing. For instance, right, if we have more than one singer, they have to be distant, right, Stuart?
Right.
And that's not always best for singing.
Rarely.
And
it also presents problems with the technology, because now that we're taping everything, and we only have one soloist or two people, we have to microphone those people and set microphones up to balance that out. Whereas if we were live, we wouldn't be as concerned with microphoning individual singers, because they could just move closer to the congregation.
And our singers are finding that their voices and breathing are are changed with either a mask or even the shield, right?
Yeah, they find it very different depending on which one they, some of them like to do that, do the shield. Others prefer the mask, and some don't want to sing either. That solves that
Yeah.
problem.
And then for me, like when I'm preaching and talking, I have a shield on and you can hear my voice is muffled. We have not been able to really change that, right, Stuart?
Yeah.
Because of, we don't have the technology at least to change that. And so when we're planning worship, these are all the thoughts that are going into the selections. Not only it will impact on what Stuart will choose for music or what someone might sing, because of all those different elements. It'll impact on, we're not going to have as long of pieces because of the length we're looking at. So those elements are in there and part of our planning as we're adapting to COVID-19.
It's interesting, even looking at the tapes before we post them up on the web, the impact of what a singer does is very different, because you're looking at the people that are watching are not watching in person, they're looking at a screen. And I certainly know from a child's teacher's standpoint, it's a very different look and feel if you're looking at a screen as opposed to looking at something live. Mm-hmm. And I think that you alluded to this. That's one reason we're letting people see Watch Me Play. Nobody would think twice about it if they were playing a piano mm-hmm. in a concert, but organists are usually hidden, especially during services. So we're trying to make it a little bit easier to cope with the issues of technology by and the technologies, the screen, by opening this up.
Mm-hmm. And every church might be different. We're doing a one camera shot. And so we have to set up with that in mind. We can zoom in and out a little bit when we've done that. And sometimes it doesn't work the way we want to. But if a church has more technology, they might have more than one camera, 2 or 3, and they might have a camera just focused on the organ, so when the organ music starts, you can see them playing. And others will have the ability to zoom in and out of different shots. And that also would help if you have a 3 to 4 minute piece, if you're seeing different shots, that would keep your attention. So we're doing a one camera shot, so we have to think of those dynamics.
Yeah, coordinate how that's going to be too.
Yeah. And so that's really, if you watch or you come in person, that's the push and pull. And the thing is if we stop and think, we're in a time that we can use technology in a way that other times couldn't have done that. If we would have had a pandemic even in the 50s, what would churches have done? They wouldn't have been able to continue these simulcast services. And
we've come so far with that. I know you don't remember this, but I certainly remember my first experience with technology was as a beginning college student or a high school senior, I guess. I bought a reel-to-reel tape recorder about the size of a briefcase for those out there in Neverland that don't know what that reel-to-reel is. And I would carry that into my practice sessions and set that up, set the microphone up. And of course, it was wonderful to be able to hear myself, but it was a lot. And of course now it's, we deal with different things like the settings of the microphones and the settings of the camera.
so hopefully that explains a little bit. So next week, we're going to look at how the decline in denominationalism has impacted worship. And what I mean by that is, at one point in time in our American history, if you were Reformed, you went to a Reformed church. If you were Lutheran, you found a Lutheran church. And now that doesn't seem to be the priority for people. They look at different things for churches, and that has an impact worship, and we'll talk about that next week.
Next week.
And we'll still take questions if you have a question. And so today we just wanted to give you a little insight of what COVID-19 worship is planning. And the one thing I forgot to say is that in COVID-19, as we plan worship, you have to be ready to change even in 3-hour notice, right? If things get shut down or if someone's sick and they don't show up, that's, at one point in time you could probably plan worship months in advance. It's harder to do that now.
Or even something like somebody steps on the plug and it unplugs the the microphone, which happened to us at one point
Yeah.
out when we worshipped outdoors. You never know.
Never know. Well, thank you for joining us, and these are our thoughts.